Q&A Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @Q&A Review, that is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@qnreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
This is from The National on Friday the 17th of May 2024 from the news section. Body of Edinburgh teacher hid at home while accused went to funfair. This article is written by Lucy Garcia. A man accused of murdering a retired Edinburgh teacher visited a funfair while the elderly man's body was hidden under a bed, a court has heard. Paul Black, 65, is accused of killing retired Fettes College teacher Peter Coshen, 75, in August 2022, as part of a catfishing plot with his flatmate to steal thousands of pounds. Black is on trial at the High Court in Edinburgh and denies 2 charges, murder and defeating the ends of justice, after 16 additional charges were dropped by the prosecution. Paul McNaughton, 29, pleaded guilty last year to murdering Coshen and perverting the course of justice. McNaughton previously gave evidence blaming Black for suffocating Coshen, claiming his role was luring Coshen, his former lover, to a flat in Leith after creating a fake profile on dating app Gaydar before the pair went on a spending spree with the victim's cash. Giving evidence on Thursday, Black said he met McNaughton in 2014 when they worked in a gay bar and admitted he was infatuated but also frightened of the younger man, telling the court, "I treated him like a son." Black, a father of 1, told the court he found out McNaughton was expecting a meet-up 20 minutes before Coshen arrived and believed the elderly man was there to have sex via a hookup app. Giving evidence, he said, "I went into the sitting room and had my telly on. He went into the bedroom. I don't know what happened. I think they were just in there talking. I had my telly on and didn't want to get involved in that kind of thing. I thought he was going to have sex with the man. Paul's known for that. I knew he liked to go out and have a bit of fun." Black said he believed Coshen had left, but went into the bedroom and saw the elderly man face down and said he checked his pulse. He said, "I heard the front door shut and thought he was away. He was lying on top of the bed face down in the bedroom. I knew something had happened as Paul was sitting beside the bed, agitated, shaking with fear. He says, I have to get out of here and go up to his house, and you have to go with me. He says, I've killed him." Black claimed he wanted to call emergency services, but McNaughton told him not to, and the pair went for a walk around Edinburgh, including going to Coshen's house and also McDonald's to eat chips. Coshen's body was hidden under the bed, while the pair went on a trip to a funfair in Burnt Island, Fife, which Black admitted he suggested, the court heard. Black insisted that he did not benefit financially, although he changed euros worth £5,000 the next day, and said he was scared and traumatised, the court heard. He added, "I said to Paul, do you want a trip over to Burnt Island? It was a nice day, just to have a break from Edinburgh. It seemed like a nice thing to do." Defending, Tony Lenihan said, "You've got a dead body in your flat." Black said, "I just wanted to get away for a while." He admitted driving a Vauxhall Vectra to Northumberland on 2 occasions to dispose of Coshen's body, and also lying to police who visited the flat as part of the investigation into the disappearance on 2 occasions. Lenihan said, "All the things you did in terms of moving body, driving to Northumberland, did you know you were covering up a crime?" Black said, "Paul said we had to cover everything up. I didn't give it any thought at the time, and I realise that now." Cross-examining, Prosecutor John Keenan, KC, said, "You knew he was being lured with a fake gaydar profile to your house?" Black said, "I didn't know." Keenan said, "And then you murdered him." Black said, "I didn't murder anybody." The prosecutor added, "Then you persisted in trying to cover it up. It was your crime as well." Black said, "It wasn't my crime." Keenan said, "Do you remember saying, 'I apologise to the family,' or something like that?" Black said, "Not that I can remember." The prosecutor added, "Were you apologising for your involvement in what happened to Caution?" Black said, "I never had any involvement whatsoever." Black's defence later urged the jury to acquit him of murder. Lenihan said a murder conviction would be unsafe, but added, "A conviction on charge 7, defeating the ends of justice, is a serious one, as Black will learn in due course from his lordship." He said Black was an uncomplaining puppy dog in a relationship where Macnaghten was the boss. Lenihan said, "You would need to buy that bubbly Paul Black would be capable of the execution of a stranger, even though the person who had had enough of that person was Paul Macnaghten." Describing the events of August the 11th, 2022, he said, "Mr. Caution comes to the door. Who kills him? Is it Paul Black, docile, bubbly, follower of wherever Macnaghten leads him? 1.5 fully working arms, who has never met Mr. Caution, who is well into his 60s. Is it really Paul Black who is the killer here, or is it young, fit and healthy Paul Macnaghten, who is angry with Mr. Caution and who pleases himself? Who killed Mr. Caution? The only sensible answer is Macnaghten." The jury in the trial is expected to be sent out to consider its verdicts by Judge Lord Scott on Friday. That article was written by Lucy Garcia. This is from the National on Friday the 17th of May 2024, from the news section. First Minister's questions. John Swinney says Alistair Jack kept Scott's nuclear plans secret. This article is written by Zander Eliards. Alistair Jack exhibited menacing behaviour by keeping Tory plans for a new nuclear plant in Scotland a secret from the Scottish Government, the First Minister has said. John Swinney condemned the Tory Scottish Secretary for failing to tell ministers at Holyrood of the plans, saying it was utterly and completely incompatible with good intergovernmental working. The SNP leader also confirmed his government would have nothing to do with nuclear power, as he spoke at First Minister's questions. It came after Jack, speaking in the Lords Constitution Committee on Wednesday, said he had asked ministers at the Department of Energy and Net Zero to plan for a nuclear reactor to be built in Scotland as part of a UK-wide programme. Although the SNP opposed new nuclear stations in Scotland, Jack claimed there would be a unionist regime at Holyrood after the 2026 elections. Swinney was asked about the comment by SNP MSP Rona Mackay. She said, "This week the Secretary of State for Scotland confirmed that planning is underway to develop new nuclear reactors in Scotland, despite opposition." Here the presiding officer had to ask for quiet, as the Tory benches cheered. Mackay went on, "Despite opposition from the democratically elected Scottish Government. Scotland doesn't need expensive nuclear power. We already have abundant natural energy resources. Can the First Minister advise if the UK Government has approached Scottish ministers about these apparent plans?" Responding, Swinney said, I am often lectured in this Parliament about the importance of good intergovernmental relations. The Secretary of State for Scotland has made no mention of this proposal to the Scottish Government. This is utterly and completely incompatible with good intergovernmental working, and is illustrative of the damaging behaviour, the menacing behaviour of the Secretary of State for Scotland. The Scottish Government will not support new nuclear power stations in Scotland. Swinney added that supporting the announcements of formidable investments in the renewable energy potential of Scotland was the policy agenda of this government, and we have nothing to do with nuclear power. The Tories' plans for a new nuclear plant were also condemned by Lynn Jameson, the chair of the Scottish Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Jameson said, "Scottish CND condemns a Conservative plan to build a new nuclear power station in Scotland. The claim nuclear power helps climate change is a dishonest gloss over the support this industry gives to the UK's nuclear weapon programme and harms of its toxic processes, uranium mining and legacies of nuclear waste. This is without pointing out that the tons of concrete, enormous costs and slow timescales are also all a total mismatch with the immediate urgency of the climate emergency. All of this, in climate terms, makes it as mad as investing in new oil fields." Scottish Green MSP Mark Ruskell further said, "There is nothing safe, secure or green about nuclear energy, and many people across Scotland will be dismayed and angry to hear that the Secretary of State is seeking to open a new reactor in Scotland." Aside from the brazen entitlement and the message this sends, it ignores that people in Scotland have long rejected nuclear energy. I hope that all progressive parties will unite in condemning this environment-wrecking overreach. That article was written by Zander Eliards. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of May 2024, from the news section. Peak time ScotRail fares scrapped for further 3 months. This article is written by Alistair Ferguson. A ScotRail pilot scheme scrapping peak time rail fares has been extended for a further 3 months, the First Minister has announced. The ScotRail peak fares removal pilot has been extended and will now run until the end of September. The scheme allows all off-peak fare tickets by ScotRail to be valid for travel all day, 7 days a week, meaning fares cost the same amount at any time during the day. The scheme was initially due to last 6 months, as it was introduced in October last year, but was extended until June the 28th. It has now been extended for a second time, for another 3 months. First Minister John Swinney confirmed the extension to the scheme during a visit to Waverley Station as part of the Leavenmouth Rail Link opening celebrations. Swinney said, "The Scottish Government's ambition to enhance our railways and make public transport easier and more affordable is clear. We know new rail investment can create real education, business and tourism opportunities and help breathe life into communities. This is currently most apparent with the soon-to-open £116 million Leavenmouth rail link. Bold initiatives, such as our ScotRail peak fares removal pilot, help build on this investment by encouraging more people to switch from car and opt to use the train. By extending this pilot for a further 3 months, we can better understand its impacts in terms of encouraging people to choose rail. It also helps tackle inequalities by making commuting, day trips and access to leisure activities even more affordable for all. I would encourage passengers to use this opportunity, not just for the daily commute, but to see all that Scotland has to offer. That might even include a trip on the Leavenmouth rail link or a visit to Fife Expo. People already benefiting from the Peak Fares removal trial should encourage their friends and family to get on board and use it too. Joanne Maguire, ScotRail Managing Director, has said she is delighted about the extension to the scheme and hopes even more people take advantage of the more affordable way to travel. She said, "The removal of Peak Fares trial has been a hugely exciting opportunity for Scotland's railway to encourage more people across the country to choose rail travel. We are delighted that the Scottish Government has decided to extend the trial, and it gives even more people the opportunity to take advantage of more affordable journeys. Everyone at ScotRail is working hard to deliver the best possible journey experience for our customers and encourage people to make travelling by train their mode of transport." That article was written by Alistair Ferguson. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of May 2024, from the Culture section. Search for Loch Ness Monster announced to celebrate anniversary. This article is written by Alistair Ferguson. A search for the Loch Ness Monster has been announced to celebrate the anniversary of the first organised Water Watch team. The quest will mark the 90th anniversary of the first organised Water Watch for Nessie, known as Watchers of the Monster, as volunteers encourage people to come and join the search to uncover Loch Ness's mysteries on May the 30th to June the 2nd. The event is hosted by volunteers at the recently revamped Loch Ness Centre as part of the celebration of Edward Mountain's first expedition of the famous waters in search of the beast. Alongside the huge search, there will be a screening of Loch Ness, They Created a Monster, a documentary that explores the monster hunting frenzy in the 1970s and 80s, with director John McClaverty hosting a Q&A afterwards. Eyewitness Richard White will also be in attendance, along with Roland Watson, a renowned Loch Ness writer, as they tell gripping stories about their experiences with the monster. There is also the chance to explore the depths of the loch with Deep Scan Captain Alistair Matheson, the skipper for the Loch Ness project. The Loch Ness Monster Centre reopened its doors last year after a £1.5 million upgrade. Visitors are guided by the voice of actor David Tennant, as the state-of-the-art tourist attraction blends high-tech multimedia, myths and science to put a new spin on an ancient legend. Loch Ness has drawn visitors from all over the world, and those who make the journey are encouraged to continue the Nessie search themselves, as the quest is a great way to explore the myth with hundreds of other monster hunters. That article was written by Alistair Ferguson. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of May 2024, from the News section. Union to confront Police Scotland over National reporter arrest threat. This article is written by James Walker. The National Union of Journalists, NUJ, has said it will follow up with Police Scotland after a journalist at The National was threatened with arrest by an officer. Sander Elias was covering a major protest which saw clashes between the police and protesters at the Thale site in Govan. The National's content editor was standing roughly 100 metres from the demonstration when he was confronted by an officer who claimed he was being obstructive to the police. During the confrontation recorded by Elias, which took place in a public street, the officer claimed he didn't have free roam to go about protest sites and suggested he could be arrested under Section 20 of the Police and Fire Reform Act. At one stage, Elias was grabbed by the officer, who then suggested, "Let's get a selfie, big man," before asking him to move around the corner. NUJ Scotland reacted to a video of the confrontation posted to the National's Twitter X account, describing it as astonishing and shocking. They added, Journalists need to be free to go about their work without interference from Police Scotland. We will be following up on this to ask why police officers apparently are unaware of the law. Other journalists also expressed their support. Kieran Andrews, Scottish political editor for The Times, said, "You know who doesn't understand? This officer. Journalists are allowed to report from a public place without intimidation or the threat of arrest from police." Scottish political editor for the Mail on Sunday, Georgia Edkins, said, "This must be looked into urgently by Police Scotland and proper training carried out. Freedom of the press is the cornerstone of our democracy." The Scottish Sun political reporter Lewis Mackenzie said, "Freedom of the press is absolutely vital, and police shouldn't be trying to shut down journalists from doing their jobs by covering protests, like in this case. Credit to Zander for handling this with professionalism and respect." The National's editor Laura Webster also spoke out, adding, "Absolutely shocking treatment of our brilliant journalist Zander today from this Police Scotland officer. Our team will certainly not be letting this incident pass us by with no questions asked." Regarding Elliot's being confronted by the officer, a Police Scotland spokesperson previously said, "During the protest, an officer engaged with a journalist and asked him to move away from an area where officers were taking part in an operational briefing. Officers provided advice and guidance, and no further action was taken." That article was written by James Walker.
This is from The National on Monday, 20th May 2024. From the Politics section. Brexit doing untold damage to Scotland's economy, new report reveals. By Steph Braun. Brexit is doing untold damage to Scotland's economy, the SNP have said, after a new report revealed the billions of pounds it is costing households and businesses. The report from the National Audit Office, an independent body responsible for auditing central government departments and government agencies, says that more than £4.7 billion of public money is forecast to be spent on post-Brexit border arrangements, with traders facing growing additional costs and administrative burdens as it remains unclear when full import controls will be in place. The UK government has delayed the introduction of full import controls 5 times since the end of the Brexit transition period. HMRC estimates that customs declarations could cost UK businesses £7.5 billion every year, with 39 million declarations made in 2022 alone. On top of that, controls introduced this year on sanitary and phytosanitary SPS goods are estimated to cost traders around £469 million once fully implemented. The SNP's international trade spokesperson Richard Thompson said it is a sign of why Scotland must look beyond broken Britain for a brighter economic future. Brexit is causing long-term damage to Scotland's economy, harming trade with our biggest international trading partner and piling ever-growing costs on Scottish businesses, said Thompson. This is holding back our economy and businesses, who are already grappling with the consequences of woeful economic mismanagement by Westminster. With the Tories and Labour wedded to the long-term economic decline of Brexit and backward economic policies that hamper growth, Scotland must look beyond broken Britain to a brighter future. The SNP is the only party offering a route back to EU prosperity, a growing economy and flourishing Scottish businesses with independence, and we remain committed to making this a reality for the people of Scotland. The report details how the UK government originally intended to introduce a full import control regime in January 2021, which would include customs and transit checks, inspections of animals, plants and their products, and safety and security declarations. Full customs controls were introduced on January 1st, 2022, with the exception of goods arriving from Ireland, where they were introduced in January 2024. The majority of the remaining import controls due to be introduced by the end of October. The report states the UK has faced increased biosecurity risk as a result of the phased approach to the introducing full import controls. It says, departments have assessed that biosecurity risk to the UK has increased since the end of the transition period. The UK losing access to EU surveillance and alert systems also reduces its awareness of impending threats. DEFRA told us there had not been any outbreaks of disease resulting from the phased approach, but that the lack of a requirement for EHCs for goods arriving from the EU would have made it harder to track the source of an outbreak if one had occurred. It adds that changes in direction about the introduction of import controls and difficulties forecasting requirements have resulted in the government spending money on infrastructure and staff that were ultimately not needed and have made it harder for stakeholders to plan. For example, the government procured or built sites at Dover Whitecliffs and Dover Bastion Point at a combined cost of £62 million, but subsequently decided they were not required when it adopted the new risk-based import control regime for SPS goods, which reduced the volume of goods which required checking. HMRC also spent £258 million between 2020-21 and 2023-24 on building and running 8 temporary border facilities to cope with additional demand which did not fully materialise. The report also states the government has no clear timetable for the implementation of its strategy to achieve its ambition of having the world's most effective border. In conclusion, the report said, more than 3 years after the end of the transition period, full import controls are still not in place. Although departments appear to be on course to introduce most of the remaining controls during 2024, there remains uncertainty about when full SPS controls will be in place. In addition, the model's operation is still to be tested, and the government may not be able to apply controls consistently as the controls are phased in. The government's new border target operating model should reduce costs to traders in comparison to its initial plans. However, repeated delays in implementing controls have meant ongoing uncertainty and an increase in risk, and the government and border stakeholders have also incurred unnecessary costs. This could have been avoided if the government had established a clearer vision of how the border should operate from the start and had taken a more strategic and planned approach to implementation. That article was by Steph Braun. This is from The National on Monday, 20th May 2024. From the News section. College lecturers across Scotland strike in ongoing pay dispute. By Alistair Ferguson. College lecturers around Scotland have walked out on strike in a long-running dispute over pay. Members of the Educational Institute of Scotland Further Educational Lecturer Association, or EIS-FELA, are taking action after talks last week did not resolve the dispute, which dates back to 2022. EIS-FELA submitted a revised 4-year pay claim on Thursday in a bid to break the deadlock, but said employers did not offer enough progress for the union to consider suspending strike action this week. Lecturing staff in colleges around Scotland walked out on Monday, the first of 9 strike days in May and June, following previous strike action. College employers are offering a £5,000 consolidated pay rise over 3 academic years from September 2022. An EIS spokesperson said it was extremely disappointing the meeting last week did not achieve enough tangible progress for the union to consider suspending the strike action. The spokesperson said, although a revised pay claim was tabled to College Employers Scotland, CES, at the meeting, the employer's side was unable to offer any assurances on certain elements of the pay uplift, as well as other parts of the claim. College lecturing staff want to be back in colleges, delivering classes and helping their students achieve their qualifications. However, they will continue to fight in order to receive a suitable pay rise, which addresses some of the financial pain and stress they have had to endure during the worst cost of living crisis in recent times. CES Director Gavin Donoghue said previously, "It is deeply regrettable that the EIS-FELA is planning yet more strikes over May and into June. This latest escalation from the trade union will not result in improved pay proposals from employers, only disruption to students as they undertake vital exams and assessments." The employer's offer of a £5,000 consolidated pay rise over 3 academic years is full and final. He added, "The quickest way to resolve this dispute is for the EIS-FELA to cancel their escalation of strike action and formally ballot their members on the employer's full and final 3-year pay offer." That article was by Alistair Ferguson. This is from The National on Monday, 20th May 2024. From the Politics section. Kate Forbes to unveil package of support for Scottish start-up firms. By Alistair Ferguson. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes is expected to unveil support for start-up firms on Monday, May 20th, as the new administration seeks to declare Scotland open for business. In the second full week of John Swinney's tenure in Bute House, the First Minister has said his ministers will show they are relentlessly focused on people's priorities. Forbes, who also doubles as the country's Economy Secretary, will visit the National Robotarium in Edinburgh on Monday, where she will announce the support. The MSP for Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch has led the drive from the Scottish Government to boost economic growth. Supporting business founders is critical for a vibrant and dynamic and growing economy, she said ahead of the visit. By empowering startups, we are creating a strong, successful economy built on entrepreneurship, innovation and sustainable growth. Backing the rise of a new generation of Scottish firms will generate new wealth as they export their products and services across the world. It's an approach that will define our economic future by a powerful blend of international capital and Scottish invention. My clear message to investors is that Scotland is open for business, Our entrepreneurs have the talent, ideas and creativity to develop and expand hugely successful businesses, and the Scottish Government stands squarely behind the start-up community and will continue to help them succeed. During her time as Finance and Economy Secretary under Nicola Sturgeon, Forbes was influential in the creation of the Tech Scaler scheme, which helps fledgling technology firms attract investment. Swinny's government has been keen to seek a reset with the business community and focus on the improvement of Scotland's economy with a view to using increased revenue to support public services. That article was by Alistair Ferguson. This is from The National on Monday, 20th May 2024. From the News section. Tech firm aiming to bring clean water to the world starts in Scotland. By Gregor Young. A team of UK-based engineers has developed new technology that promises to revolutionise access to safe, clean drinking water for millions of people worldwide, and it's starting its work in Scotland. Despite advances in modern infrastructure, many homes, businesses and tourism hotspots still rely on bottled water or costly and hard-to-maintain private water supplies, especially in rural areas. In Scotland alone, about 24,000 properties are dependent on these solutions. With many properties failing annual water quality tests, occupants and visitors have relied on bottled water for years, which contributes significantly to transport miles and the growing challenge of plastic waste. It is a problem seen globally. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, predicts that without urgent action, global plastic waste will nearly triple by 2060. Of the 1.3 billion plastic bottles bought daily around the world, nearly 45% end up in the ocean after a single use, eventually breaking down into microplastics, which enter household water supplies. Traditional water purifiers are often clogged by contaminants, deteriorating quickly and typically ending up in landfill. Made with polymers, filters disposed of today will still be decomposing multiple generations into the future. But the innovation created by tech company IF uses a miniature vapour compression distillation system that operates without consumable parts or added chemicals. The environmentally friendly, low-cost approach can be operational in just 45 minutes, purifying water from previously untreatable sources from anywhere in the world. Duncan Peters, founder and CEO of IF, said, "Access to safe drinking water is a global problem that is only getting harder as global warming, ageing infrastructure, industrial waste and modern contaminants gathers pace. This is why accelerating the path to clean, reliable water is so incredibly important in our lifetime." Water is also becoming harder to purify. It's estimated that 93% of the world's piped water now contains some form of microplastics, hormones, pesticides, or other heavy metals. Traditional purifiers are just not designed to solve these problems, and as a result, we are turning more and more to environmentally damaging plastic bottles. Globally, we are using 1 million bottles of water every minute. About 80% of single-use plastic ends up in landfill, or eventually the ocean, poisoning the earth and making the problem worse for the next generation. At IF, We want to see a future where you can turn on a tap anywhere in the world and know that you have crystal clear water that is free from pollutants 365 days a year. We are starting that mission in Scotland, where around 3.5% of the population currently rely on off-grid water sources every day. We are confident that we can make a significant and immediate impact on access to safe and reliable water supplies globally. One of the first businesses to benefit from the new technology is the Port Sonachan Hotel and Lodges on Loch Awe. Due to its heavily peated water supply, the hotel buys more than 90,000 litres of bottled water each year, adding £13,000 to its operating costs. Struggling with its unsightly brown water, its owners have tried multiple purification methods, none of which have delivered consistent results. Traditional methods use filters, reverse osmosis, or ultraviolet light techniques, which eventually deteriorate with use or can release unknown contaminants over time. Owner David Parker said, "Our water is currently a peaty brown colour, which is met with various reactions from guests, ranging from amusement to horror. They expect clean, pure water during their holiday. We've tried several different and more traditional purification methods over the years, including a £30,000 centralised system that has never worked. Unfortunately, even if it did work, we have 20 years of peat that is built up in our pipes. Relying on bottled water has been our only solution up until now." Sustainability is core to our values, but we also need reliable, crystal clear water. We need a solution that is low maintenance, reliable, and easy to install. We are proud to be the first hospitality business in Scotland to be introducing IF's technology so that we can stop purchasing thousands of litres of bottled water each year and give our visitors access to high quality water. IF has so far received funding from organisations including Scottish Enterprise, Zero Waste Scotland, Edinburgh Climate Change Institute and Scottish Edge. The company was also a winner at the Scottish Edge Awards in 2021. That article was by Gregor Young.
From the National, Tuesday the 21st of May, from the news section, Edinburgh, woman dead and man arrested after weapon incident. Report by James Walker. A 78-year-old woman has died and a man has been arrested after an incident involving a weapon on a residential street. Police were called to a disturbance at a house in Furnesside Crescent in the south-east of Edinburgh at about 8:25 a.m. on Tuesday. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene. Local residents have reported hearing gunshots in the street. It is understood the incident involved a weapon, but no one was shot with a gun. Police Scotland said that a 36-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the death. In a statement, the force said their inquiries are continuing. They added, "This was an isolated incident and officers remain in the area to provide public reassurance, and anyone with concerns should speak to officers." Forensic officers were at the scene on Tuesday afternoon and the area remained cordoned off. Police Scotland said a report will be submitted to the Procurator Fiscal. And that article was written by James Walker and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the National, Tuesday the 21st of May, from the news section, Bill to exonerate Scots Horizon IT scandal victims passes first hurdle. Report by James Walker. A bill introducing emergency legislation to exonerate sub-postmasters wrongly convicted in the Horizon IT scandal has passed its first stage in Holyrood. MSPs unanimously backed the general principles of the Post Office Horizon System Offences Bill on Tuesday, with politicians across the chamber arguing it was the greatest miscarriage of justice in the legal system. Sub-postmasters in Scotland and the rest of the UK were convicted of crimes including theft, false accounting and embezzlement because of the faulty IT system used by the Post Office. If passed, the bill will result in those wrongly convicted being exonerated and given access to the UK Government's financial redress scheme. The Scottish Government brought the proposals forward as an emergency legislation after the UK Government refused to extend its bill to cover Scotland. Justice Secretary Angela Constance has said it's the Government's intention to have the legislation in place as soon as possible after the UK bill passed. And she told Holyrood's Justice Committee she may ask Parliament to be recalled in the summer to pass the legislation quickly. Speaking as the bill passed its first stage, before moving on to the second on Thursday, Constance said she would also be lodging an amendment to remove the exclusion of appeals heard by the High Court. These allegations has a ruinous impact on innocent sub-postmasters and their families, she said. Some were made bankrupt, some lost their homes, some were branded thieves by their communities, and some took their own lives. She added, I recognise the gravity of taking this unusual step of quashing convictions by way of legislation. However, the unprecedented scale of the miscarriages of justice caused by the Horizon IT system means that the steps proposed by this bill are necessary. She said it is hoped the legislation will provide a quick, fair and equal solution for all sub-postmasters. Scottish Tory Justice spokesman Russell Finlay told the Chamber the scandal was perhaps the greatest miscarriage of justice in the country's legal history. He said the scale and audacity of the cover-up from the Post Office was breathtaking and reprehensible. He also asked for an explanation as to why the Crown Office continued to put Scottish sub-postmasters in the dock after it was widely known that the Horizon evidence was not reliable. Scottish Labour's Justice spokeswoman Pauline McNeill said, the cover-ups, the lies told and the dysfunctional nature of the Post Office internal investigation and prosecution functions led to the ruining of many lives, not just sub-postmasters but their families too. Suicide, financial ruin and families who left the country due to the talk of the scandal in small villages. It must never be allowed to happen again. And that report was by James Walker. From the National, Tuesday the 21st of May, from the news section. Lord Walney Review recommends sweeping crackdown on protests, by political reporter Hamish Morrison. Sweeping measures to crack down on protests, including making activists pay to protest and potentially spying on campaign groups, have been put forward by the government's advisor on political violence. Lord Walney recommended a series of severe changes to protect our democratic values from intimidation, such as a blanket ban on face coverings at protests and making it easier for businesses or members of the public to claim damages from activist groups that cause disruption. He said the government should consider making protest buffer zones around MPs' constituency offices and local council chambers, in the same way that abortion clinics will be protected. The peer backs measures to restrict the ability of some groups to organise and fundraise if they are considered to have a policy of using criminal offences that would lead to a prison term, for example destroying property or causing serious disruption or injury. Asked about the report, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said, extremism has no place in our society. Threatening or intimidating behaviour that disrupts the lives of ordinary hard-working people isn't acceptable. In his 292-page report on political violence and disruption, he also claims law enforcement does not know enough about the extreme left. He says, I conclude, unsurprisingly, that there is a greater violent threat from the far right. Yet I find a worrying gap in our understanding of the extreme left, whose activists do not routinely employ violent methods, yet systematically seek to undermine faith in our parliamentary democracy and the rule of law. The report sets out 41 recommendations, including a review of whether undercover surveillance is being used appropriately in the context of public order and aggravated activism. The government should develop a mechanism to review charging decisions by prosecutors to make sure protest laws are being followed properly. The law should be changed to allow the police to consider the cumulative effect of protesters on anti-Semitic hate crime levels. The intimidation of candidates and campaigners should be specifically criminalised before the next election. The Lord Chancellor and Lord Chief Justice should review whether juries and judges are more lenient on protesters to support progressive causes such as climate change and anti-racism. The government should boost physical protection for private defence companies against protesters. The intelligence services and relevant government departments should be given more resources to identify disinformation online and work with technology companies to have it removed. Lord Wolney came under fire before the publication of the report because his interests as declared in the House of Lords Register include jobs for companies that also act for energy firms. He told The Guardian he had maintained an objective standard and sought a wide range of views while writing the report. Lord Wolney rejected suggestions that such links undermine the credibility of the report on Tuesday, saying at a media Q&A in London chaired by Peter Manderson, "No, it doesn't. My list of interests is transparently set out." Asked whether the recommendation for extra protection for defence and energy companies, in particular, was connected in any way to his financial interests, Lord Wolney said it was worth implementing extra protection for those industries. Asked by Lord Mandelson whether the proposals were workable, the former Labour MP, who quit the party under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, admitted they could be laborious to try to implement. "I just think the public is sick of the way in which they feel their priorities are ignored, and there is not sufficient deterrent effect in stopping this kind of extreme economic disruption," Lord Wolney said. Just Stop Oil said it did not recognise the legitimacy of the report because of the links, while Extinction Rebellion, XR, called it shameful that it had been asked to write the report. An XR spokesman said, "We are a movement committed to non-violence. We train everyone acting in the name of Extinction Rebellion in non-violence. We have stewards to manage crowds responsibly. We have a policy for how to clear an area for emergency services. If the government can come for a group that works this hard at peaceful protests, they can come for anyone." Joe Maugham, head of the Good Law Project, also highlighted Lord Wolney's links with energy firms and the defence industry. He added, "We are firmly into the territory of our government banning organisations whose politics it disagrees with." Home Secretary James Cleverly said he would carefully consider Lord Wolney's recommendations. He said, "The right to protest is a vital part of democracy, but there is absolutely no place for criminality or harassment on our streets. Too often we have seen vile displays of hate crime and aggressive tactics used by so-called protesters." Lord Wolney's report raises important questions on the cumulative impact of disruptive and extremist activity on our communities. "I thank Lord Wolney and his team for this extensive and compelling report." Cleverly said an extra £31 million of funding has been provided for security for MPs, and the definition of extremism has been updated. That report was by Hamish Morrison.
The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of May. Scotland's top officer shocked by the lack of focus on frontline policing. An article written by Craig Williams. Scotland's top police officer has said she has been shocked by the lack of focus on frontline policing since taking up her post 7 months ago. Addressing the centenary conference of the Association of Scottish Police Superintendents in the Borders, Police Scotland Chief Constable Joe Farrell said the organisation was being held under the water on a daily basis by the scale of demand it faces. She pointed to officers being taken off the front line to do work that should be done by police staff, and the demands of mental health incidents and court citations, which she said had a significant impact on policing by taking officers out of their communities and seeing rest days cancelled. She said that an officer attends a mental health-related incident every 3 or 4 minutes on average, which, she said, equates to between 500 and 700 full-time officers' worth of time. She went on, "We must focus intently on our core duties and what matters to the people we serve. We must evolve our service so that we can live within our means and are fit for the challenges coming down the line. Some of our evolution will be in our structures and working practices, but everything we do must be about prioritising the front line and tackling harm and high harm and the issues that most affect the communities we serve." She added that since starting in the post 7 months ago, she had been quite surprised and at times shocked at the lack of focus on frontline policing in this organisation. Her comments come after a speech from the association's president, Chief Superintendent Rob Hay, in which he called on police to steer clear of toxic culture wars. Superintendent Hay told the conference, "The divisive, political and toxic nature of some of the debate raging in wider society is not a place policing should ever inhabit. The flood of spurious complaints received upon the enactment of the new hate crime legislation is the latest example of the mischief-making we have seen, undertaken with spiteful glee and diverting police resources from those in actual need. So let us be pacifists in the culture war, as we have no interest in arresting J.K. Rowling, no matter how much she tweets about it, nor are we interested in investigating Hamza Yusuf for describing some people as being white." He said that while officers have an important role in policing genuine hate crime, they must not be drawn into the petty point scoring, filling much of the debate. The Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act came into force on April the 1st. An article written by Craig Williams. The National Politics on Wednesday the 22nd of May. The Equality Regulator is investigating the Department of Work and Pensions over the treatment of disabled benefit claimants. A front-page article written by Lucy Jackson. The Department for Work and Pensions is being investigated by the Equality Regulator over suspicions that its treatment of disabled benefits claimants broke equality laws. The government's Work and Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride, and some of his predecessors are suspected of violating the Equality Act 2010 while in charge of the department, the Equality and Human Rights Commission said on Wednesday. The regulator is looking at whether, during health assessment determinations, which form part of the application process for some benefits, the department failed to make reasonable adjustments for disabled people with learning disabilities or long-term mental health conditions. Health assessment determinations decide whether a consultation or medical examination is required as part of a person's health assessment and what format it should take. The Commission is also investigating whether the department failed to consider equality and prevent discrimination in its day-to-day operations, as required as part of its public sector equality duty. The investigation will assess whether the department complied with this obligation when developing, implementing and monitoring policy guidance related to health assessment determinations. The Commission's chairwoman, Baroness Kishwa Faulkner, said, "We are extremely worried about the treatment of some disabled benefit claimants by the Department for Work and Pensions. We suspect that the Secretary of State's department may have broken equality law. We have decided that we need to take the strongest possible action, and that's why we've launched this investigation. The Department for Work and Pensions is responsible for vital support which many disabled people rely on, including personal independence payments, employment and support allowances, and universal credit. Access to that support must be fair and must meet the requirements of the Equality Act 2010. Our investigation, alongside the equality duty assessment we are also undertaking, will find out whether the Department for Work and Pensions and the Secretary of State have breached equality law. If they have, we will use our unique legal powers to hold them to account." The Equality Regulator started looking into the department after an all-party parliamentary group recommended in 2021 that it investigate the deaths of vulnerable claimants by suicide and other causes between 2008 and 2020. The regulator initially planned to address its concerns by signing a legally binding agreement with the Department for Work and Pensions, but has decided instead to pursue a formal investigation. The Commission is seeking information and evidence from disability charities and whistleblowers who have worked for the department. A Department for Work and Pensions spokesperson said, "The government is committed to improving the lives of disabled people, and our recent Disability Action Plan sets out 32 actions we are taking to make the UK the most accessible country in the world for disabled people to live, work and thrive." The Department for Work and Pensions is committed to providing a compassionate service to all our customers. Benefits assessments are carried out by qualified health professionals with reasonable adjustments available to protect vulnerable claimants. We take our obligations under the Equality Act incredibly seriously, including the public sector equality duty, and will continue to cooperate with the Commission. A front-page article written by Lucy Jackson. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of May. The future of Aberdeen University is in significant doubt following financial uncertainty. An article written by Lucy Jackson. Aberdeen University's accounts reveal significant doubt has been raised over its future as a result of a series of financial pressures and uncertainties. The ancient institution, which has made headlines in recent months over proposals to axe the Modern Languages Department, suggested it could not guarantee it would be able to continue as a going concern for the next 12 months. Aberdeen University was founded in 1495, making it the third oldest university in Scotland and the fifth oldest in the UK. It's one of the only universities to offer Gaelic as a degree. In its most recent set of annual accounts and report, the university highlighted external uncertainties such as rising costs, falling numbers of international students and a cut in Scottish Government funding, which it said had created a material uncertainty over its ability to deliver its financial recovery plan, achieve key targets and meet the terms of a recent refinancing package. The university said that this may cast significant doubt over the ability of the university and group to continue as a going concern. Organisations are required to detail any such uncertainties and doubts under international accounting rules. The university said that a recent recovery plan was helping to cut costs by £18.5 million, ensuring it is on a firm financial footing for the future. It said management was very confident that with continued agile, effective action, we will survive and thrive, whatever the challenges facing the higher education sector. The institution's ruling court also said that whilst it recognised the uncertainties, it believed the university would be able to achieve the requirements, meaning that the financial statements were prepared on a going concern basis. The university's financial documents reveal that a fall in international student recruitment, which has been linked to UK government immigration changes, has led to a net shortfall in income last year, which would have meant the university would not be in a position to meet its debt service covenant test for financial years 2023-2024, 2024-2025 and potentially for 2025-2026. A financial recovery plan was agreed in December, which included a refinancing package with the university's banks. However, the situation has worsened since then in relation to funding and international students. Signalling the potential for fresh reductions to staff numbers, the report said, a range of measures have therefore been identified that result in further savings, meet covenants and return the university to a stronger financial position. These range from a review of our estate management, disposal of surplus to requirement assets, and a reshaping of the professional service directorates to adapt to changed demand and volumes of activity. Given that approximately 60% of total expenditure relates to staffing, it's inevitable that further options around levels of pay and the size and shape of the university must also be considered. The accounts also show that £3.5 million worth of costs incurred on an abandoned campus redevelopment had been written off by the university. the refinancing package result in the repayment of £30 million of bank loans, using funds previously earmarked for the redevelopment of the King's campus, replacing this with a revolving credit facility. The university faced severe backlash last year when it announced plans to axe modern languages courses and jobs, with more than 18,000 people signing a petition urging a rethink. It's since opened a voluntary severance scheme, with members of the local university and college union branch announcing that they intend to launch a formal dispute over the university's failure to rule out compulsory redundancies for staff. Aberdeen's student newspaper reported that Senior Vice Principal Carl Leidecker informed staff last week that the university was getting closer to achieving its goal of reducing staff costs by £12 million, with 240 applications for voluntary severance and enhanced retirement schemes. A University of Aberdeen spokesperson said, "The annual report, which we began drafting some months ago, sets out the potential risk if the University of Aberdeen had not taken swift, highly effective action to address financial challenges." The university has now reduced costs by a hefty £18.5 million and is consequently on a firm financial footing for the future. Our financial situation has radically changed because of early retirement, voluntary severance and operational efficiencies, as well as a major drive to grow and diversify our income. The term material uncertainty reflects the position reported by Universities UK that the higher education sector faces additional challenges as a result of the current migration policy, which has caused a steep decline in income from international student fees. The University of Aberdeen has been around for over 500 years. We are very confident that with continued agile, effective action, we will survive and thrive, whatever the challenges facing the higher education sector. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "Our universities play a pivotal role in Scotland's economy and society, and despite facing the most challenging budget since devolution, the Scottish Government will invest over £1 billion on teaching and research, including an increase in funding for research and innovation. This will ensure our universities continue to play a pivotal role in Scotland's economic growth." An article written by Lucy Jackson. The National News on Wednesday, the 22nd of May. Gaelic is a minority language in the Western Isles for the first time. An article written by James Walker. Gaelic is now a minority language in the Western Isles for the first time, despite an overall skills uplift across Scotland. The latest 2022 census data found that just 45% speak Gaelic in the language's heartland, compared with 52% in 2011 and 60% in 2001. The majority of people in the Western Isles, 57.2%, still had some non-speaking Gaelic skills, a far greater level than the next highest council areas, Highland at 8.1% and Argyll and Bute at 6.2%. This comes despite the census finding an overall Gaelic skills uplift across Scotland. The census found that 2.5% of people aged 3 and over had some skills in Gaelic in 2022, an increase of 43,100 people since 2011, when 1.7% had some skills in Gaelic. The percentage of people with some skills in Scots also increased to 46.2% in 2022 from 37.7% in 2011 and was higher in the northeast of Scotland. Deputy First Minister and Gaelic Secretary Kate Forbes said that the increase in people with some Gaelic skills is another important step in securing the future of the language. Ms Forbes added, "The forthcoming Scottish Languages Bill will build on this progress, along with continued Scottish Government funding for Gaelic arts, education, broadcasting and community initiatives. My appointment as Scotland's first Cabinet Secretary for Gaelic is a further sign of this Government's determination to preserve Gaelic as a vital part of our culture." Following the publication of the census data, the official Twitter or X account of the Scottish Parliament's Education, Children and Young People Committee asked whether Gaelic communities are in crisis. Language campaigner and Sunday National columnist Rhoda Meek responded, Of course, it's still in crisis. The numbers are almost entirely useless. The census question was so lacking in nuance, it's laughable. It's almost like we want to make ourselves feel better while ignoring the broader issues. An article written by James Walker. The National Politics on Wednesday the 22nd of May. John Swinney removes a Scottish sheriff from office after groping allegations. An article written by Xander Elliots. A Scottish sheriff is to be stripped of his position by First Minister John Swinney after being found unfit to hold the office. It comes after a tribunal investigated whether Sheriff Jack Brown was fit to hold his office after various allegations from multiple women about his conduct. Among others, one said he had kissed her on the lips and squeezed her buttocks without consent in 2 incidents in an unnamed court. The tribunal found no good reason to question the woman's evidence. Colin Campbell, the chair of the tribunal, who is known as Lord Malcolm, concluded, "In our unanimous view, Mr Brown's misbehaviour renders him unfit for judicial office, and we report accordingly." The First Minister has laid an order before the Scottish Parliament that will remove Mr Brown from office on June the 7th this year. Mr Brown currently sits in the sheriffdom of Grampian, Highland and Islands, one of 6 in Scotland. Sheriffs in Scotland oversee and rule on cases before sheriff courts, which can be civil cases of value up to £100,000 or criminal cases for allegations which are not treason, murder and rape. For less serious cases, a sheriff may rule alone, while in more serious cases a jury also sits. In order to become a sheriff, a person must be an advocate or solicitor in Scotland for a continuous period of at least 10 years, immediately preceding the appointment, according to the Judiciary of Scotland. Mr Swinney said, "Given the nature and gravity of the tribunal's findings, there are compelling reasons to remove Sheriff Brown. The tribunal has reported serious concerns as to his character and integrity, contrary to the standards of conduct and probity expected of anyone holding judicial office." Mr Brown was first reported to the tribunal by Nicola Sturgeon in 2018 during her time as First Minister. In March 2021, the tribunal concluded that while Sheriff Brown acted inappropriately, he was not unfit to hold judicial office. A petition for judicial review was lodged, and in February 2022, the tribunal's decision was quashed by the Court of Session on the basis that the tribunal had proceeded in ignorance of the availability of other evidence from other witnesses. An article written by Xander Elliots. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of May. Navy officer fined as a warship narrowly avoids crashing in the Clyde. An article written by Gregor Young. A Navy warship came within a hair's breadth of disaster after nearly crashing into an oil tanker in the Firth of Clyde. The officer responsible tried to cover up his actions and has been reprimanded, has lost his seniority and has been fined £3,600. The Daily Record reported that Lieutenant Ewan Playford Johnston had left an untrained colleague to navigate on the HMS Penzance, a minesweeper, when the incident happened on the night of April the 17th, 2023. The Navy ship, which is based at Faslane, was on a collision course with the 12,000-ton Sten Baltic, the court was told, when that tanker's captain took action to avoid a crash. The Sten Baltic is an oil and chemical tanker that flies under the Norwegian flag. Mr Playford Johnston admitted to negligently hazarding a ship and breaching standing orders at a case which was heard by the Bulford Military Court in Wiltshire. The 2 ships came within 400 yards of colliding, the Record reported. Assistant Judge Advocate John Atwill told Mr Playford Johnston, "The consequences would have been unthinkable. Your actions on that day brought that ship within a hair's breadth of disaster. It brought you within a hair's breadth of prison." An article written by Gregor Young. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of May. Protesters disrupt Shell shareholders' meeting. An article written by Lucy Garcia and read by Howell. Shell's chairman was accused of greenwashing as he addressed shareholders at the oil giant's annual general meeting. Sir Andrew Mackenzie was interrupted by protesters as he opened the gathering at the Intercontinental London, the O2 Hotel, yesterday. Dozens of people stood up and began performing a rendition of the Dolly Parton song Jolene, singing "Shell kills, Shell kills, Shell kills, Shell kills." As security staff carried protesters out of the meeting room, they chanted, "Who kills the climate? Shell kills the climate." 4 people could be seen shouting and linking arms to make it harder for security to remove them. Before the meeting, a crowd of demonstrators gathered outside the hotel, erecting large signs reading, "Shell profits kill" and "Your greed is killing humanity," as a protester made speeches through a megaphone. Mr Mackenzie began his opening remarks by defending the company's stance on climate, emphasising the goal to be net zero by 2050 and how Shell believes that the energy system will transition. It comes after Shell scaled back its short-term and medium-term targets, weakening a 2030 carbon reduction target and ditching a plan to reduce oil production by 1 to 2% each year for the rest of the decade. The approach is part of new Chief Executive Wal Sawan's strategy to focus on higher margin projects, steady oil output and growth in the production of natural gas to increase payouts to shareholders. A Shell spokesperson said, "We respect people's right to express their point of view and welcome any constructive engagement on our strategy and the energy transition. However, these protesters have shown that they aren't interested in constructive engagement. We agree that society needs to take action on climate change, and we firmly believe our climate targets are aligned to the more ambitious goal of the Paris Agreement on climate change." In today's meeting, you will have heard that Shell is wholly committed to becoming a net zero emissions energy business by 2050. An article written by Lucy Garcia. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of May. Big moment as rocket fires at Scottish spaceport. An article written by Lucy Garcia. The successful test firing of a rocket in the Shetland Islands is a big moment ahead of the first space launch due later this year, the head of the UK Space Agency has said. Dr. Paul Bate praised the hot test of a German rocket's first stage at Saxefjord Spaceport last week, saying the UK could become the leading country in Europe for small satellite launches. Dr. Bate also said there should be no race to the bottom in regulation of the industry, after concerns were voiced that there is too much red tape involved in launching from the UK. Rocket factory Augsburg test-fired 4 Helix engines from the first stage of their rocket. One was sitting atop a 12-metre-high launch stool. The rocket stage was transported by sea and road from Germany to Saxefjord at the northernmost tip of the UK. Another space launch is expected to take place next year from the Sutherland spaceport on the Scottish mainland, Dr. Bates said, with this one being a rocket from UK company Orbex. The head of the UK Space Agency was at the Space Propulsion Conference, which is taking place in Glasgow, bringing together organisations involved in rocketry and spacecraft from around the world. Scotland's wonderful geography means it's an ideal location for launches to polar and sun-synchronous orbits, he said, with several sites hoping to host vertical or horizontal launches in future. Amid strong global demand for small satellite launches, many countries and private companies are exploring new ways of reaching space. Rocket factory Augsburg said the test firing had been a full success. Co-founder and Chief Operating Officer Dr. Stefan Brishank said, "Over the next few weeks we will install 4 more Helix engines on the first stage to complete the 9-engine cluster. Once these have completed the checkout tests, the next hot fire with 9 Helix engines will take place after the end of the bird breeding season in Saxefjord. The full 3-stage rocket could be stacked at Saxefjord in August." An article written by Lucy Garcia.
This is from The National on Thursday, 23rd May 2024. From the culture section. Taylor Swift, Scottish Council criticised for asking staff to volunteer at gigs. By Donald Turville, local democracy reporter. A member of Edinburgh Council's administration has criticised the local authority for asking its staff to sign up as volunteer marshals for next month's Taylor Swift concert. Council employees were offered a unique opportunity to warmly welcome visitors to the city, guide the public to Murrayfield, and provide general information ahead of the megastar playing 3 sold-out nights in the capital on June 7th, 8th and 9th. Colleagues have the chance to play a crucial role in ensuring these events run smoothly and safely, an internal advert said, adding managers have been asked to be as flexible as possible in accommodating this. Councillor Katrina Facenda, Labour, hit out in response, saying if staff are helping out with the highly anticipated show, their other duties are not covered. She added, the council is donating the value of the hours volunteered to enable private companies to profit. The council pointed out it has previously sought volunteers to assist major events, including for the King's coronation last year and following the death of the Queen in 2022. Councillor Facenda said, this is not a public occasion like Olympics or Commonwealth Games. It's a concert by a performer who is a billionaire, and the tickets have been sold for vast sums. She said the council needed to break free from being happy to enable others to get rich when nothing comes directly to the council. She added, hotel rooms are being upsold by booking agencies well above rack rates for massive profits, and until we learn to be more assertive and stop listening to the stories of how much we're being benefited pitched to us by the profiteers and large-scale events will never benefit the residents of Edinburgh as much as they could. Edinburgh Council was contacted for comment. At the start of the week, the council was looking for around 30 staff members to help out between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Friday, June 7th, and by Wednesday had responses from the required number of volunteers. The internal advert stated, these concerts are expected to be the largest events ever held at Murrayfield, with thousands of visitors descending upon the city. Colleagues have the chance to play a crucial role in ensuring these events run smoothly and safely. For those who volunteer during the regular working hours, you will be compensated as usual. Any additional hours worked will be paid as overtime in accordance with our normal overtime rules. We understand that volunteering may impact your other work, and we have requested managers to be as flexible as possible in accommodating this. In addition to the rewarding experience of being part of these major events, it said Scottish Rugby has generously offered 2 tickets to each volunteer for one of the November tests, featuring Scotland against Fiji, Australia or Portugal. Swift is set to break the record for Scotland's biggest-selling stadium show when she takes to the stage at Murrayfield next month. The pop sensation, who has charged up to £660 for tickets to the hotly anticipated Eras tour, will play to just under 73,000 adoring fans, breaking the record held by her ex-Harry Styles since he took to the stage at the rugby ground last summer. That article was by Donald Turville. This article is from The National on Thursday, 23rd May 2024, from the Culture section. What items are banned at Murrayfield during an event? By Andrew Smart. Thousands of people across Scotland will be looking to attend Murrayfield this summer as huge names in sports and music come to the venue in the coming weeks. However, it is easy to get caught out by showing up to an event with an item not permitted on the grounds. To make sure your night is not ruined and you get into Murrayfield without any issues, here is everything you won't need to know. What items are banned from Murrayfield Stadium in Edinburgh? According to the Scottish Rugby website, there are a number of items that are banned from Murrayfield in Edinburgh. Customers will not be permitted to bring the following items into the Scottish venue. Bags larger than A4 size, unless required for medical or childcare purposes. Alcohol of any kind. Customers must dispose of this at bins provided at the entry points. Cans, opened bottles, and any kind of glass or metal container. Sealed plastic soft drinks or water bottles larger than 500 millilitres. Fireworks, flares, smoke bombs, and any kind of pyrotechnic items. Possession of those may constitute a criminal offence, with those found with those being referred to police. Knives, weapons, and other hazardous items. Banners or flags with slogans which are offensive, abusive, racist, homophobic, or of a discriminatory nature. Animals, except for guide dogs. Gold or large umbrellas. Cameras that do not fit comfortably into pockets or handbags. Tripods, selfie sticks, and iPads. Other items deemed to pose a risk of injury and annoyance. It should be noted that Murrayfield does not have bag drop-off facilities, so customers will be required to take offending items and deposit them in a safe place before entering the stadium. That article was by Andrew Smart.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and to tell your friends about our service.